There we go. Perfect. So I just introduced myself. So this is sort of a renewal of the webinar series that Kelly, Period of the Period, did a wonderful job of previously. So hopefully I'll do okay following on from her. I am Avital Praise. I lecture at Birmingham City University and also do some research into sport performance and the menstrual cycle. So I'm really excited to be hosting these, getting to meet loads of different researchers, practitioners in the area, and then getting to showcase them. So this is the first one that I'm doing, and we've got the wonderful Dr. Kat Schneider with us, who is from the University of West England, and her research focuses on body image, weight stigma, and weight bias, with the aim to then apply that and create more inclusive and accessible environments for movement in general, and with a focus on sport and exercise. So I'm really excited to hand over to her and listen to her speak whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I will share my screen and hopefully it will work and go smoothly.
I can see that.
Fantastic. I'll go into presenter mode as well. I probably will not see any Q&As or chats or anything like that, but so please shout out. Basically, if anyone has a question, feel free to ask during. I've kind of minimized everyone, so I feel a bit odd just staring at my screen. So I'm gonna, I'll redo that.
I'll keep an eye on the Q&A. So
Fantastic.
You just go ahead.
Right. So hi, thank you for having me today. I'm very excited to speak on this topic. I'm always excited to speak on this topic. As Avital mentioned, I'll be talking about body image and weight stigma in sport and exercise settings and how we can create more inclusive movement spaces for all. A little bit about me. So I'm a research fellow at the Center for Appearance Research. We primarily do applied body image research. A lot of it is in collaboration with Dove, the Dove Self-Esteem Project, who fund our time. And then I've also worked with other companies like Nike, for example, in the Body Confidence Sport Project, which basically aims to upskill coaches and girls to create more body positive sports environments. I am now leading a project exploring weight bias in the fitness industry. I'm very passionate about body image and weight bias, and particularly I think weight bias is still largely under-researched and unfortunately very present in the sport and exercise communities, and very prevalent in the fitness industry. So I'm not sure this will work, but I will reshare my screen with a mentee. It just would be great for me to know who is in the room, because this is my first time presenting at this wonderful webinar as well. So if you could just, if you're able to, if you're available, if you have a mobile device nearby, if you could just scan this QR code and just put in something brief about your role in the sport and exercise sciences. So are you a researcher, a lecturer, a practitioner, a clinician, an athlete, a coach? I'd just like to know a little bit of who else is in the room today. I have this open here, so maybe we can have a look at any answers as they come in. Great, some answers are coming in, so that's great to see. Thank you. Researchers. Sorry? Oh, apologies, I thought it was a question. So we have, I don't know if you can see the Mentimeter screen. We have some lecturers, mostly researchers. We have coaches and athletes. We have other academics. Great, fantastic. So of course I'm a researcher, so that's where my experience is coming from primarily. However, I have also, I'm just gonna reshare that. However, I have also worked as a personal trainer myself at more than a decade ago now, and I've studied sport and exercise psychology basically from bachelor's to PhD, and now very much focused on research in the body image and weight stigma space, but I have some practical experience as well. So thank you for doing that. So today, I don't want to keep you too long. I'm mindful of the time. We're briefly going to cover these three main points. So again, I don't know how familiar everyone is with body image and weight stigma, so I'll introduce these terms, provide some definitions. I will then talk about what is actually quite normal in current sport and exercise and physical activity settings. So, and how we can spot body image concerns and weight stigma in these more typical sport and exercise settings. And then we will go on to talking about how we can promote more appearance-inclusive sport and exercise environments for all bodies. As I mentioned, if you have any questions throughout, please feel free to interrupt if you have burning questions, or I'm happy to have a discussion at the end as well. And so for today, you can obviously just listen in and not engage. I've provided some interactive content so that it's just a little bit more exciting than just listening to me talk for 45 minutes. But you can also just listen in if you prefer that. If you'd like to interact a little bit more, then these are the things you will need. Particularly the third point I want to highlight. And I'm always mindful when I'm giving these kind of talks that people who are quite open-minded to body image and weight stigma research are probably the ones who are already in attendance. So assumingly this audience already has a fairly open mind and probably some knowledge or awareness about these issues. But then sometimes I have also faced a bit of, I wouldn't say backlash, but a little bit of hesitancy from people who are less familiar with the topic. And so I think the open mind is like a really key point when we're discussing quite sensitive issues such as body image and weight bias. So for the first activity, just to warm up, so we have mostly researchers and academics here, assumingly in the sport and exercise sciences. So let's create a bit of a profile for this client, for this person who is attending a gym. You can think of yourself as a personal trainer or a fitness instructor, or you could also think of yourself as an academic, just answering these questions without actually creating a training plan. How long has she been exercising? What are her exercise goals? And does she have any contraindications to exercise? I'll just give you a minute just to jot down some thoughts or just have a think. Let's also create a second profile for this person. Same questions. Again, you can choose the role that you feel most comfortable in: personal trainer, fitness instructor, academic, coach, clinician, counselor, nutrition, whatever it is you want to take on as your role. These are the questions to ponder. How long has she been exercising? What are her exercise goals? And does she have any contraindications to exercise? Just a few seconds to have a think about that as well. And as you're jotting down these notes, also have a think about what is the same and what is different between the two profiles that you have written, if anything. What are the similarities? What are the differences between the two profiles that I showed you before? And we will come back to this a little bit later on in today's talk. Let's start with some definitions. So as I mentioned, I'm primarily a body image researcher. Body image generally refers to how a person thinks, feels, and behaves towards their body. And we often talk about body image in terms of both the body's appearance and how it functions. So appearance is something that usually comes to mind for most people when we talk about body image, but we generally break down body image into appearance, so how your body looks, and also body functionality. So that's everything that the body can do. And when we talk about everything that the body can do, we're not just talking about like physical capabilities like sport and movement, but we're talking about internal processes, physical capacities, bodily senses, creative endeavors, communication with others, and self-care. These are generally the established categories of body functionality. So it's important to not just think about, okay, I can run really fast or I can lift very heavy, but also my body can heal from a cold, I can communicate with loved ones, and so on. Also, when we talk about body image, we can talk about positive or negative body image. And although these are related constructs, they are distinct. So if you can have a bit of both. Positive body image, of course, refers to being satisfied with your appearance and functionality, but also more than that, it's an appreciation, respect, and care for the body. And negative body image, we generally talk about body dissatisfaction. Sometimes when we talk about positive body image, we also talk about body confidence. So it's referred to in a few different ways. But the important thing to remember is that you can have both. They're not on a spectrum from negative to positive body image. You can have some aspects of your body or functionality that you're dissatisfied with, whilst overall still having an appreciation and overarching respect for the body. Weight bias. So there's a couple of definitions I want to go through here as well. Weight bias refers to negative attitudes, beliefs, assumptions, and judgments towards others because of their body weight and size. And we often also talk about and research internalized weight bias. So this is when you believe in the negative stereotypes that others have said or that society has said about bigger bodies, and you apply it to yourself and to your own weight. So that's internalized weight bias. We'll talk about weight stigma. So this is, while weight bias is the negative attitudes, judgments, and assumptions, weight stigma is actually discriminatory acts and behaviors that are targeted towards individuals because of their body weight and size. And then we'll talk about anticipated weight stigma. So either because of past experiences of weight stigma or aggressions towards someone, or because you're just expecting to be stigmatized against because of your body shape and size. Anticipated weight stigma refers to intrapersonal internal cognitive phenomenon of beliefs or expectations that you will be mistreated in the future. Often this is based on previous experiences of weight stigma, but it can also be based on kind of societal ideals of what a healthy or beautiful body should look like, and expectations of when you're entering different spaces where weight stigma is most prevalent. So particularly healthcare and fitness studios. Also, I just want to pause here with a caveat. Oh. Sorry, I think someone's not on mute. Okay, great. Just a caveat here as well, that kind of throughout my presentation and whenever I talk about weight bias, I use larger body, and often I use the word fat as a neutral descriptor of body size and weight, to avoid using stigmatizing medical terms like quote unquote overweight and quote unquote obesity. Fat liberation activists and fat liberation researchers often use the term fat as a neutral descriptor as a way of reclaiming the terminology around fat bodies. And so that's the term I generally use, sometimes also larger bodies. And I generally tend to avoid medicalized and stigmatizing terminology. So why does all of this matter? I think that's important to cover, because that's why we're here. So here's a couple of screenshots cut out of articles that I'll let you peruse it at your own time. Basically, body image is not just how we think and feel about our bodies. It affects a lot more than that. And this is specifically focused on sport and exercise settings, where we know that body image not only has strong associations with physical and mental health outcomes, but also sport performance, sports enjoyment, and ultimately physical activity and sports dropout. This has been in the news a little bit more lately, with sort of change in particularly female uniforms, for example, in volleyball and gymnastics, uniform short changes in football as well, from white shorts to blue or darker colored shorts, but also this is of course present in male sport as well. So from the literature, we know that body image concerns are associated with distress and psychological issues, so depression, anxiety, stress, also suicidal behaviors, feelings of worthlessness, self-esteem. Body image concerns also associated with dietary restraint and unhealthy eating practices, disordered eating behaviors and eating disorders, and also excessive compulsive or disordered exercise, or on the other extreme, exercise avoidance and sport dropout. Very similarly, weight stigma is associated with poor body image and body dissatisfaction, which is negative body image, but also low self-esteem, feelings of worthlessness and loneliness, anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts and acts. Similarly to body image, with maladaptive eating patterns, avoidance of physical activity generally, and also avoidance of medical care and receiving worse care from healthcare professionals. We also know that this is a very prevalent issue, as I mentioned previously. So all of us develop weight bias. because unfortunately, the way society is currently set up, through media representations, through healthcare campaigns, through government initiatives, it's all phrased that weight or being at a certain weight or being at a higher weight is bad for health. And also, we see a lot of media portrayals that negatively or stereotypically portray people in larger bodies. And so, actually, if we don't actively fight against it, all of us have the possibility to develop weight bias. And 40 to 90% of us, regardless of what body size we are actually in, are likely to experience weight stigma at some point in our lives. As mentioned, weight bias is prevalent. Weight bias and weight stigma are prevalent in a wide range of domains, with healthcare settings and sport and exercise settings being some of the highest, having some of the highest prevalence of weight stigma. And also, these include direct and indirect experiences of weight stigma. So it's not always overt, it's not always as obvious, but we can talk about things like microaggressions. We can also talk about things like direct discrimination. We can talk about things like weight-biased attitudes, but these are present across a wide range of domains in an individual's daily life. So let's come back to these pictures that we had at the start. I'm actually just gonna reshare because, okay. Yeah, I think we've skipped ahead. I'm not sure why, because we're not coming back to them yet. So hold that thought. We are here. Okay. So let's specifically focus on sport and exercise settings where we talk about body image concerns and weight stigma. I'm going to show a video. I hope this video works. This is actually a promotion video for the Body Confidence Sport program that I was collaborating with Dove and Nike on. This is one promotional video that basically, the message of this video is about highlighting that a large percentage of girls drop out of sport at adolescence, and body image is a big contributor to why girls drop out of sports, and actually why there's still such a big gap between girls and boys and men and women in terms of physical activity and movement participation. Let's hope this works. So why was this program developed? This is a quote from a research paper about weight stigma experiences that somebody has faced in the gym. I'll let you have a read of that as well if you'd like. So every time I went to the gym, there was a discussion with the gym trainer, and he pretty openly commented that he did not believe I had the discipline to last there in the long run. And he only did that to me, and I was the only person in that place who was overweight and went there on a regular basis. We also have evidence that this is often the case in the sports literature. So from another study by Vani et al., coaches would just kind of make overweight team members run extra laps, and they would mock them while they were running, and they would say it to the entire team. Like, we all knew and were aware of it, and I'm surprised that no one spoke up. We also conducted our own research with girls and coaches across 6 different countries, and these messages keep coming up. So weight stigma, weight shaming, body shaming, very, very prevalent concerns in all sport, and particularly affects girls and women's sport. There's also overlaps between the fitness and sports environments. So what weight stigma or weight bias might look like in a fitness setting is, for example, assuming a client's goal is to lose weight or change their body shape, hiring fitness professionals who look a certain way, who fit a certain body ideal, offering modifications only to individuals of higher weight, having equipment that does not fit all body sizes, and only showcasing larger bodies as before photos. In the sports setting, it might look something like this. So recruiting athletes who look a certain way or of a certain weight, not providing uniforms that fit everybody's shape and size, placing an athlete in a certain position based on body type rather than performance, treating athletes with larger bodies differently, usually worse than treating athletes in smaller bodies, and requiring different workout regimes for athletes based solely on their weight and body size. And as mentioned, the overlaps. So basically assuming an individual is inexperienced, unskilled, or unknowledgeable simply based on their body shape and size. In both fitness and sports settings, commenting on an individual's body shape or size. So we refer to this as body talk. Well, part of body talk. Body talk can also be targeted towards oneself, but also towards others. So commenting on someone's body shape or size. Giving unsolicited nutrition or weight loss advice, or assuming that a larger person is seeking weight loss at all. Dismissing a client's complaints of pain or fatigue due to body size, and also framing exercise as a punishment rather than something we do for enjoyment. So for example, to burn off calories, to make up for what you ate, to make up for not training enough, etc. And I've summarized in 3, I think, bullet points, kind of what behaviors or what signs of body image concerns we might spot amongst clients, athletes, gym goers, any individual in sport and exercise settings. These are some signs of that body image concerns are present. So disordered eating and exercise behavior, as I've mentioned before, is a key sign of body image concerns, and we often talk about body image as a precursor to disordered eating and eating disorders. So signs could include extreme dieting, restriction around food, compensatory behaviors, such as engaging in excessive exercise, perhaps also things like eating in secret or skipping food altogether. Also, an excessive focus on appearance, so frequent comments on or worry about body size, shape, or weight, expressing dissatisfaction, comparing oneself to others, so that's when we talk about appearance comparisons, and focusing excessively on weight, food intake, or body measurements instead of performance and enjoyment of sport or physical activity. And finally, again, as mentioned before, avoidance behaviors. So often people with body image concerns or with poor body image will exhibit these avoidance behaviors, such as skipping training, avoiding certain clothing. So for example, wearing clothing that is too tight or too loose or not form-fitting, or ultimately withdrawing from activities due to discomfort with one's body. And in the literature, we also know that poor body image or negative body image often leads to disengagement with from a variety of activities, including physical activity, but also participation in social events, participation in classes like raising your hand in school, and other activities. And of course, we know that not all sport and exercise environments look like this, but unfortunately, this is still the reality for a lot of such environments. So this is the advertisements we see still to this day. Some of them are older, some of them have changed. So for example, strong is the new skinny and nothing tastes as good as being fit feels, actually reflect a changing societal ideal that goes from the thinness ideal, which was pretty prevalent 10, 20 years ago, to a more fit ideal. So the fit ideal is still very lean, very thin, but just emphasizes more leanness rather than just thinness. We also know that the fit ideal, so nothing tastes as good as being fit feels, it was previously as being skinny feels. It sounds like a healthier version of the thin ideal, but actually it is still equally harmful. Studies have found that the fit ideal, similarly to the thin ideal, is associated with disordered eating and disordered exercise behaviors, as well as other negative mental health outcomes. But still, these kind of quotes, and some are more extreme than others, but no pain, no gain, we hear often. We also hear messages about like not quitting, not stopping, which on the surface might seem like empowering, motivating messages, but actually, again, it's about not listening to your body's internal cues and pushing through pain to achieve a certain physique. In sports settings, this physique is also often very, this physique ideal is often very gendered. So we can see the differences between male and female sports uniforms, and we can also see the differences in how male and female athletes are represented in the media. So male athletes and generally men in society are often portrayed as more holistically, so not just for their appearance, and we're generally more accepting of diverse appearances amongst men. On the other hand, women are usually presented in passive poses, so posing rather than in active movement, in more revealing uniforms, in more sexy poses, and also with a focus on them being mothers or wives rather than athletes in their own right. As I mentioned before, this is somewhat changing. So there has been a shift in some sports towards, for example, longer pants in gymnastics for women as well, longer shorts in volleyball, darker colored shorts in football to counter sort of menstruation and period concerns. But this change is still very, very slow and still very much ongoing. There's also been a general societal shift in the fitness industry more broadly around body positivity. Of course, the body positivity movement was huge just a few years ago, and the health at every size approach, so trying to push diverse appearances that can be healthy. So, for example, we can see the plus size mannequin, which was, I think back in 2014 maybe, was showcased by Nike. And of course, different representations of differently, basically athletes and individuals in different bodies as fitness professionals. Both of the individuals shown here, so the one in the Self magazine is actually a yoga instructor, qualified yoga instructor, and the one in the middle, I don't think she's a fitness professional herself, but has been a fitness influencer and sponsored by Gymshark. So showing influencers in different body shapes and sizes as representing what fitness and health can look like. As you may also be aware, this shift towards health at every size in the body positivity movement has not come without loads of backlash. So one of the key concerns or key criticisms of the body positive movement have been that it quote unquote promotes obesity, which of course it doesn't. It just showcases diverse body types and shows that anybody can be fit and healthy, but the backlash has been huge. For example, when Nike did present this plus size mannequin, that is not, I think it was more recent than 2014, not even plus size really, very average body type, I think it was a size 14. They were faced also with extreme backlash. And this is to know that Nike actually doesn't really go above a size 2XL for most things, so they're not that size inclusive. And even this mannequin that kind of went against the norm was faced with extreme criticism, which also highlights the kind of paradox in society of thinking, oh, fat people should be training more, exercising more, but actually we do not want to provide equipment and attire for them to be able to do so. A quick note before I move on intersectionality. So who is most affected by this weight bias and these present body image concerns? So as I've already mentioned, girls and women are usually present higher rates of body dissatisfaction and are usually more affected by body image concerns due to gendered appearance ideals, as well as I've mentioned, of course, people living in larger bodies, again, discriminated against for body shape and size. But also, as we saw from the previous images on the fitness look, the before and after photos, the ideal appearance, the ideal bodies in society, we often see a lack of representation of people of color, people with disabilities, and also people who don't fit into the male-female binary. So it is important to think about how weight bias affects all of us, but it doesn't affect all of us equally, and some people are at higher risk of discrimination based on appearance. And so often when I am presenting on weight bias, particularly to sport and exercise professionals or academics, this question does come up. But what about health? Isn't it unhealthy to be fat? This question comes up all the time. And understandably so, because what we're taught basically from when we start our degree and even earlier is that being quote unquote overweight is bad for health, weight loss is beneficial for health outcomes, etc. This is what I was taught in my sports science undergrad. This is what I was taught in my personal trainer qualification, and this is what we're continuously taught. The message is also reinforced by the government's I'm not sure what they call it, strategy to combat obesity. So it's constantly reinforced as weight equals health, being overweight is bad, losing weight is good for health outcomes. But notably, all these factors that I've presented on this slide are associated with weight gain, are associated with poor health, and these are factors that are associated with weight stigmatizing experiences. So why do we sometimes see a correlation, not a causation, but we do indeed sometimes see a correlation between weight and health? But are we taking into account these factors that might explain this relationship? So experiences of weight stigma can activate chronic stress responses. We know that stress, cortisol levels, all of this can actually lead to weight gain, but also detrimental health outcomes and other conditions such as type 2 diabetes and chronic diseases. As mentioned before, individuals who experience weight stigma or who anticipate to experience weight stigma are more likely to delay or avoid seeking medical care due to fear of discrimination, and they often actually receive worse care because often physicians will go straight to "you should lose weight" rather than tackling the underlying symptoms of their condition. And so when we're talking about why individuals of higher weight show worse health, this is an important factor that is often ignored in correlation research that compares weight and health. Actually, they're not getting the healthcare they need as quickly. So of course, their health is worse. We also know weight stigma is linked to disordered eating behaviors and decreased motivation for physical activity, both of which can also affect weight management as well as health. We also know it links to a variety of mental health conditions. Again, a lot of these are usually not accounted for by studies who simply try to examine the correlation or association between weight and health outcomes. Social isolation, another thing that often contributes to poor health outcomes. In fact, loneliness and social isolation consistently shows strong links with poor mental and physical health outcomes. And chronic exposure to stigma, chronic exposure to any type of discrimination. So we see the same in people of color who experience chronic exposure to racism, microaggressions. We know that these things do contribute to poorer health. So unless a study has looked at kind of all of these confounders to explain why weight might be associated with health, we still do not see a clear causation of gaining weight as being worse for health, losing weight as improving health outcomes, but rather we need to examine these mechanisms that might explain this relationship. So I think this is where I kind of face usually the most sort of hesitancy or the most, so it's hard to challenge these assumptions because we've been taught all our lives that weight does equal health. So this is, I think, where that open mind really does come in, and when we start to critically examine the literature that shows a correlation between weight and health, because a lot of the time they actually neglect these confounding variables that we can see clearly can help explain that relationship. And we also know there's studies published in the 1950s and sort of more than 50, 70 years ago that show already back then that improving fitness, improving health behaviors leads to improved health outcomes, whether or not weight actually changes. So it's fitness versus fatness. I think there's actually a study called Fitness versus Fatness that you can look. I think it's from 1950s. So we actually do have evidence from a long time ago that weight is not the key variable in health. Health behaviors are. And it doesn't matter if weight changes or not. We can still improve an individual's health through health behaviors. So to sum up, research does not support a direct causal relationship between weight and health, and instead weight is influenced by a complex interplay of social, biological, environmental, and genetic factors, many of which are often ignored in weight management literature, but that are beyond an individual's control. Social environmental factors such as food insecurity, genetic factors such as proneness to weight gain or weight loss, etc. And we also do know that people can experience health and well-being across a variety of body sizes. Again, just to sum this up, we know that weight does not directly cause specific health outcomes, and weight loss does not always improve health outcomes. Even if it did, or even if you show me a study that says, well, actually, for this population or for this chronic health condition, weight loss improved outcomes, I would ask, well, what are some other mitigating factors there? What are some other confounders there? Did participants lose weight because they engaged in health behaviors? And could those health behaviors be actually the thing that's responsible for the improved health outcomes? Because we also know that weight loss efforts are not successful or sustainable for 95% of people in the long term. So even if we could prove that weight loss was effective at improving health outcomes, we know that weight loss is not sustainable for a majority of people. So why are we telling them to focus on that to improve health when actually it's a very difficult thing to achieve? We also know that those who exercise for appearance reasons and weight loss are less active than those who exercise for functionality and enjoyment. So again, if we're focusing on appearance as a key motivator for people to exercise, for example, or to eat a certain way, we know that that's actually not going to work. So again, it's better for us to focus on enjoyment, functionality, performance, rather than appearance. And as mentioned, we know that health behaviors 100% do contribute to improved physical and mental health outcomes, and they do so regardless of whether or not an individual's weight changes. So if you're asking someone to exercise more or exercise in a more balanced way, eat in a more balanced way, sleep better, so there's other health behaviors than just food and exercise. But if you're focusing on health behaviors that individuals can control to some extent, you're actually going to get the beneficial health outcomes regardless of whether weight changes or not. So are we really supporting people in their sport and exercise endeavors by focusing on weight and appearance? I would say no. So how do we create more appearance inclusive sport and exercise spaces? Generally, we talk about approaching this using a systemic approach. So individual attitudes and behaviors, interpersonal interactions, organizational environmental structures, and societal beliefs and attitudes. So using a socio-ecological model as the approach of tackling body image concerns and weight bias on all levels in society. And for this, I think it would be great to do a couple of case studies. So again, looking at the individual level, the interpersonal level, the organizational level, and the societal level, what would you recommend as strategies to tackle the body image concerns and weight stigma present in these case studies? So the first case study, a junior basketball player, Alex, is consistently teased by teammates about their size, with comments suggesting they need to lose weight to improve their performance. This leads Alex to skip practices, feel self-conscious during games, and consider quitting the team. Again, whichever role you take on as an academic, as a scientist, as sport and exercise psychology professional, what are some steps that you could recommend on each of those levels? I'll show the levels again. That can help improve the situation. Any tips, any strategies, what steps should we take to improve the situation in this case study? I'll give you a minute to have a think about that. Some examples that you may have come up with. We can go through this together. So individual attitudes and behaviors could be things like encouraging Alex to focus on strength and performance rather than appearance, offer mental health support, such as access to a sports psychologist or counselor to build self-esteem and resilience. Again, this depends a little bit on what role you have in this situation and how to remedy the situation. Interpersonal interactions could be things like address the teasing with teammates directly. So if you're a coach, for example, emphasizing the importance of mutual respect and teamwork, training coaches, training fitness professionals, training healthcare professionals to recognize and intervene in weight stigma and body talk. A lot of the times we don't actually notice body talk because it's so normalized in society. So I feel fat today. Oh, she looks so great in that dress. Oh, did he do something with his hair? Body talk is so normalized that we often do not spot it and don't recognize it as the harmful thing that it is. So even just training someone to recognize and intervene when they see weight stigma or body talk occur can be an effective strategy. On an organizational level, implementing policies that explicitly address weight-related teasing and discrimination. So we know actually that to this day, we have, I believe, 9 protected characteristics in the UK that are protected against discrimination, such as age, sexuality, gender, etc. But weight, body size, and appearance is not a protected characteristic. So that's something that I think explicitly needs to be addressed. So implementing policies and conducting workshops to educate staff, to educate whoever you're working with on body diversity, the impact of weight stigma on health and performance, and also the inconclusive evidence regarding weight and health. And then advocating for broader public awareness campaigns that challenge weight stigma, promoting body positive role models, and partnering with sports organizations that promote inclusive messaging in media and advertising. We're going to do this exercise one more time with another case study. So the next case study is Taylor, a regular participant in a group fitness class, avoids certain exercises or wears baggy clothing due to discomfort with their body. They often make negative comments about their appearance and compare themselves to others in the class. Again, take on whichever role you want to have. Perhaps try to challenge yourself by taking on a role that is actually not who you are. So perhaps you are now a government official, or if you're not a coach in real life, perhaps you're now a coach, or if you're not a fitness instructor, perhaps now you're a fitness instructor or a gym manager. How can you tackle this issue on the 4 different levels of the socio-ecological model? I'll give you another few seconds to think about that. Again, some of the ideas you may have come up with could be on an individual level to encourage Taylor to set personal non-aesthetic goals. Again, often body image interventions start at the individual level, so how to upskill individuals to shift their focus from appearance to functionality. Also providing resources or referrals for support. On an interpersonal level, again, training fitness instructors to use inclusive and non-appearance focused language. So in gyms, we often hear talks about calories, appearances, and a lot of this body talk and very appearance focused language. So we can shift that again to focus on performance, health, well-being, functionality, enjoyment. Fostering supportive community within the class by encouraging positive feedback and camaraderie. On an organizational level, again, creating policies for fitness programs, avoiding weigh-ins, body measurements, or appearance-focused promotions. Still, the promotions we often see for fitness studios are, for example, before and after pictures of previous clients, so this can be avoided. And we can offer diverse role models and promotional materials to represent all body types and fitness levels. So, for example, even entering a gym space that claims to be inclusive, but that only has thin white people hanging pictures of thin white people hanging on the walls, again, is very exclusionary. And then on a societal level, we can collaborate with fitness industry leaders and promote national campaigns encouraging diverse representation and celebrating all body types in fitness. I will show an example of such a campaign just a little bit later on, but just to sum up in terms of how we can create more appearance inclusive sport and exercise environments. So focus on performance, highlighting what bodies can do, so body functionality, rather than on what bodies look like. Challenge appearance-based norms. So again, they're very common, very normalized, but we can clearly explicitly challenge harmful stereotypes or comments about ideal bodies and set policies in place to promote respect for all individuals. We can encourage holistic health. As mentioned, there's a lot more to health than just appearance or weight. A lot of factors contribute to health, and we need to provide equal support for all of them. Stress, chronic stress, is a key element of health and also actually weight management, but is often kind of neglected. Usually we're just focusing on exercise and diet, but we know that those 2 things are not the only things that we can control for our health outcomes. Monitor language and practices. So as mentioned, avoid weigh-ins, before and after pictures, or any language that prioritizes weight loss or appearance over health. Model positive behavior. So I think we can all do this. We can all avoid discussing weight or appearance, avoid engaging in body talk, correct people when we spot weight bias, weight stigma, or body image concerns come up. We can educate others once we're comfortable spotting it and modeling positive behaviors. We can also educate others on body diversity, on the flawed science behind the concept of weight equals health, on health at every size approaches, and the lack of direct correlation between weight and athletic ability and health. Foster a supportive environment, so create inclusive spaces where all people feel welcome. Normalize, denormalize body talk, but normalize discussions around body image. So this should not be something that's stigmatizing. If people are having body image concerns, they should be open about it. They should be taken seriously, and they should be able to come to you and speak about their body image concerns. So this is not talking about how the body should look like, but saying, oh, I feel uncomfortable in my body because of whatever. We should normalize these discussions. And of course, provide role models in all spaces. If whatever field you're working in, it could be something as easy as if you're doing a presentation on sport and exercise, do you have any larger bodied individuals in your presentation slides, or are all your fitness images of thin, able-bodied, lean people? It could be something like when you're teaching different theories to your students about sports motivation. Again, do you have representation of larger bodies, or also do you use larger bodies in a derogatory way as like a before and after picture, or in a way where fat bodies are only portrayed with like a measuring tape around their waist, or like headless bodies that are just focused on like the midsection or something. So it's like little things you could do in daily life when you start thinking about how you're presenting fat bodies and how you're presenting diverse sport and exercise settings. Before I wrap up, I'm going to show one campaign, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, that does this to a certain extent, shows a more inclusive, more holistic, less appearance-focused fitness culture. Okay, and now we're gonna finalize with going back to these two pictures and just reflect for yourself on the notes you may have taken previously. When creating a profile for these two clients, or when answering questions about their exercise habits or their health, were there any differences? And were these differences based on body size alone? Perhaps what assumptions did you make about these two individuals? What assumptions might others make about what their goals of exercising are? Are we assuming that the fat individual is exercising for weight loss or appearance reasons, versus we might be thinking that the thinner individual is exercising for fitness gains or strength gains or health? So just maybe reflect on the exercise from the beginning and see if your thinking has changed at all, and how it might have changed, and how you might create different profiles if you were to repeat that exercise now. And I promise I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you for listening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for that, Kat. It was really interesting. I mean, I know you're currently with Emma Cowley doing some research on it. I mean, Emma had some really good chats. And I think it's so interesting when you kind of were talking about how so many studies which have been done about adverse health outcomes. And even I know when I teach on my sport nutrition lecture, I was just thinking then that there's actually so much stuff that I could change. It's just so, I guess, set in your mind that because the messaging is from a young age,
Yeah.
that weighing less is what's healthy. And so it's something that I'm very aware of, like weight bias, weight stigma. So on like a personal level, my friends were very kind of body neutral, body positive, but actually there's definitely areas what I could improve, especially thinking about when I'm in a position of education.
Absolutely.
So we'll open the floor up for any questions. I'm just gonna, I think someone's put something in the chat. So Emma, thank you, has said, thank you, Kat. I could listen to you all day. Do you think platforms like Instagram and TikTok are driving a shift in the ideal female body from thin to fit? If so, could this focus on building muscle be just as harmful as previous trends centered on extreme fitness? No, sorry, trends centered on extreme thinness.
Yeah. Yeah, as you mentioned, I've been working with Emma, so she probably does listen to me all day, go on and on. Yes, Instagram, TikTok, social media platforms are driving the shift because there's the Fitspiration hashtags, and so while like pro anorexia or thinness or skinny content is becoming less like socially accepted, the Fitspiration content and Fitspo content is very much accepted and very widely available, and it has shifted to show women as more muscular, more lean, still very thin, but definitely more muscularity emphasized than in previous thinness content. But as I mentioned, research shows that aspiring to the fitness ideal is actually just as harmful because for the same reasons the fitness ideal is not always attainable for all body shapes and like body types. We could eat the same and train the same, but we wouldn't all look the same because there's many things that determine how we look. So first, it's unattainable for a lot of people. Also, it still requires a lot of disordered eating, disordered exercise practices to potentially achieve that look for some people. Again, some people might gain muscle easily, or some people might attain that physique easily, while others don't. And we do know that internalizing that fitness ideal actually also is associated with disordered eating practices, disordered exercise practices, and poor physical and mental health outcomes, just as internalizing the thinness ideal. So it's portrayed as like a healthier version of the thin ideal, but it's in reality, evidence is currently showing us that that's not the case.
Thanks for that. Anyone else have any questions? Feel free to pop your microphone off if you'd like. From a brave speaking out loud. I guess following on from what Emma said, I think what kind of I think about is, do you think the positives and maybe the positive movements on social media outweigh it's the more harmful movements, which are, I think, positive intentions, especially when we think about nowadays for social media, it's so targeted to your individual page and you sort of end up in like an echo chamber and bubbles. How do you think you kind of go about combating that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's the pros and cons with social media. So we can curate a social media feed that's predominantly positive. So following kind of body positive activists and influencers and seeing diverse body shapes and sizes in our feed. I agree. The con of that is that it can create a silo in a way, but it can also be protective for mental health if you do diversify your feed with the bodies you see in terms of ability, body shape and size, skin color, and lots of different things. There are still problematic aspects of the body positivity movement because the body positivity movement has kind of strayed from its initial roots in the fat liberation movement that was centering marginalized bodies, women of color, and people in much larger body sizes. Nowadays, the body positivity movement still features mostly quite thin women with maybe some stomach rolls or some cellulite, but still predominantly very thin, straight-sized bodies. So it's by no means the most inclusive. Just because you're following BOPO influencers doesn't mean you have the most inclusive perspective of diverse body shapes and sizes. But I think it's a start. I think if we all just like try to diversify the types of bodies we see on our page, whether it's if you look at your page and you think, oh, I'm following a bunch of fitness influencers, but there's also a bunch of fitness influencers who don't meet the ideal, body type that's portrayed in society as the ideal fitness type. And you can diversify your feed and you can still follow people that you're interested in the content, so fitness, for example, but you're just seeing diverse body shapes and sizes, do yoga, do weightlifting, do running, do whatever it is. There's loads of them. There's loads of people in different bodies doing sports, doing physical activity, doing types of exercise. So I think we could all. I think it's good for us all to see different bodies, to normalize seeing different bodies.
Thank you. Well, thanks for that. I think we'll wrap it up here. I found it really interesting. I hope everyone on the call also did.
Thank you.
It's a big thank you to you, Kat. We've got our next webinar, I think, coming up. It's going to be confirmed, but I think end of January or February. But until then, I hope you have a lovely break over Christmas, whatever it is that you're doing, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Thanks,
Thank you
Kat.
so much. Thanks for having me. Have a good evening.
And you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
You know.